Alright guys, so we're going to take this stack of 2x4s and turn it into this. Completely custom Telecaster. So this is what I'm calling the $10 guitar body. It could be actually less than that if you could actually find a really good quality 2x4 at your local blue or orange store. So I'm literally laying in the floor at Lowe's, putting all this together in the floor, trying to pick out the best ones that I like as far as the wood grain goes. So at most of these indoor lumberyard stores, they have a little end cap of 2-foot 2x4s, and these are like $1.70 a piece is what these cost right now. This is January of 24. So I'll just say $2 a piece. You need 4 to 5 of them depending on how you're going to do it. They are 4 inches too long, which it's not that big of a deal. You can just work with it like that. It gives you a little bit of play as far as positioning your outline. A standard 2x4, the actual dimensions, and it even says that on the 2x4 is 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So the thickness is 1.5 inches. So, which is about what a Squire or most import guitar bodies are, the cheaper guitars. I could deal with it myself, and if you might be frowned upon using pine, Fender on the original Esquires and Broadcasters and No-Casters, and at some point the Telecaster, they'd actually use pine on it. Probably 1 3/4 was the thickness. But anyway, I'm going to try to make this video short and as sweet as possible. So we'll talk about, you got about 3 or 4 different options to choose from doing this. If you want the fastest and cheapest route, you only need 4 of them. So you eliminate one, and you go to glue and clamp. You're going to have a slight recess right here where a 2x4 has got a rounded edge. You can see how the edge is rounded. So when they butt up together, there's going to be just a little tiny valley right there. So if you're going to do a solid color, meaning not transparent where you're not going to see the wood grain, your best bet for doing this is to just go ahead and glue them all together. Then when it's done, fill this crack or seam or valley, whatever you want to call it, with wood filler or epoxy or pretty much anything that can fill it. You can also even use Bondo for like auto body repair. It makes a really good wood filler as well, because you're never going to see it. However, if you're like me and want to do a natural finish, because I love wood grain, it's almost like an obsession. You pick out your best pieces to start with, then you can do it. There's several different ways to do it. If you got a joiner or edger, whatever you want to call it, which you run through like this, it'll square that off, make it perfect. If your boards are very straight, you can do it on a table saw and just take like a blade width off, and that'll square it up, true it, and eliminate the valley on here. Now if you want it to be obvious that you're making this out of 2x4s, you could use like a dark walnut or something, a real dark or even black wood filler on this to fill this. That way it almost looks like a log cabin kind of look on it. So it just depends on what you're going for, how much time, money, and effort you want to put into it. So the actual wood itself is only what's costing $10. That's not including your glues, clamps, tools, and all that kind of stuff. But if you got everything on hand, you can actually make a decent quality guitar body for hardly nothing. And this could be called the $3 guitar body if you could find a really good quality 2x4, like an 8 or 10-foot 2x4 to work with. But these are pretty flat. I picked out the best ones. I actually got to decide what I'm going to do myself. I'm thinking about using a router with a template bit with a straight edge to true it up, because I really want it to look as best as I can. But you can get by with 4 2x4s if you're not going to be joining them. If you're just going to be doing like a solid color and filling in the seams, you want to center it. It just gives you more to work with if you go with 5, but you could get by with 4 if you're not going to join them. And honestly, we'll see here. I'm not going to take any more off than I have to with the router, so we might be able to get by with 4 after all. So if that's the case, I'll pick out the worst one and remove it, which will probably be this one with the knot. You got to watch 2x4s, any type of pine, for knots. So the strap body is approximately the same width. It is a little longer, but I'm just showing you that it gives you plenty of room to work with. So this is the type of router bit you need. Maybe not quite this big to do this. This one has a bearing on the top and the bottom, and that runs along the pattern part to match it. You only take off a controlled amount, so you're not taking off too much. So this is my new skill router, and let me get everything set up, and we'll try to make a little quick video on it. So I'm just using double stick tape. It's designed for templates and stuff. So this is going to go on here after I set it up. That gives me a straight edge, and the whole thing will be secured in place on this table. It's obviously going to be overhanging to avoid the router bit hitting any metal or anything. May put another piece of wood under this as well, just to space it up. Alright, so this is either going to work amazing, or we're going to ruin another piece of wood. So this is double stick tape to this, and this is clamped to the welding table. It's offset where the router bit, this is overhanging the metal. So it worked good, but I'm going to have to do it one more time. I already reset it out just a little bit. All this is just about perfect. Right here, somehow it tilted on me. It got off parallel, and it did that. And we got a little chunk down here. But let me do it again and we'll look at it. So did it again, and it looks good except for just a slight imperfection here. And I think time I sand it, all that should come out, and hopefully it'll be alright. Alright, so I went back and redid that one. I think what the problem is, this board is slightly warped or bowed this way. As you can see, it's kind of humped up here, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to clamp that in the middle up here to hopefully attempt to straighten that. If not, we'll have to try not to use that piece or figure out something on there. But it's still 16 inches. So now we got flat joints, as flat as it can be without sanding it. Next step is glue and clamp. Now I am going to sand all these edges, because even though it's super smooth, you still want to hit this with about an 80 grit paper just to rough it up to open the pores up so the glue can actually like seep into the wood. The glue may not bond to this as well if you don't do that. The only piece that gave me a slight problem, let's see, I think it was this one. Not really an issue, but when it came across here, you could tell this was a harder spot, and it hit a little bit harder there. A little bit of chatter here. The time this is sanded, it'll be about as good as I can get it with what I'm working with. So if there's still a slight gap or something, it must be an error from the board, because it transferred it to this. But I think we're going to have a pretty good joints on this. So we're right there. I got a little bit to work with there. We might just eliminate this piece and work with the 4 pieces. Because now, generally I would try to make the seam here the center line, but I don't know quite sure if I can do it or not. But we definitely got enough to work with here. We got about an 1/8 inch on each side, so we're going to try to get by with 4 2x4s. I just feel like that's going to be a better solution, since this one's got a slight warp in it. So all these boards are laying together just about perfect. Like I said, this one's got a slight curve in it. You can kind of see it there. So I thought I'd check the clearance here. So I got this set on the center line, you can see, and it is flush right there. So as long as we don't make a mistake, it'll be fine. We do have a little bit of play here, but anytime you get a joint like this, I'd rather make the make it the center line just because it's easier to reference things. So that's probably what we're going to do, and just eliminate that 5th piece, which was the worst piece out of the 5 anyway, because it's got these little dots in it. Alright, so a couple days later, I sanded all the edges with the palm sander. They're pretty flat. Then I went back over it with 80 grit sandpaper just to kind of open it up a little bit so the glue got a little bit of bite. So we're going to go ahead and glue this. I'm going to set it up. I got pieces of angle iron to clamp it to help hold all the boards straight. Then it'll be left alone for a while. It says clamp for 30 minutes. I had to switch to Titebond for the glue. I've always used Elmer's wood glue, but couldn't find it. So I don't have enough of my old bottle to do it. So we'll go with Titebond. It's supposed to be a good glue. I just never have used it. So, alright, let me get it set up and we'll look at it again. So just run a little bead around through here, and then just kind of do it like this, and work it. If you need more, it's fine. If you get too much, just wipe it off. You just want a little film over it. The most important thing is you want to make sure all surfaces are coated. And there will be a lot of squeeze out. That's why I put this trash bag down, just to catch all that. Alright, so try to explain what's going on here. The 3 big clamps are squeezing it this way. More clamps are better. I wouldn't mind having 2 more in there. Got them tight as I could get it before they started bowing. Got 2 pieces of angle iron here, C-clamped on, and this is straightening the boards, making sure they're all lined up as even as possible. That way there'll be less sanding, because I can't plane this because it's already on the thin side. So I did the same thing on this side. That should help hold everything together. Another thing you can do is just put like one of the squeeze clamps on like each seam just to help line it up. But I thought I'd try this. I kind of like the way it's set up. Might set up clamps just before doing this and actually weld it to it. That way it's just easier to put on there. But we'll see. See how this goes and go from there. I wipe off much of the glue from the top. You're always going to have a lot of a squeeze out. You can kind of like scrape some of it off once it dries, or just wait and sand it off. It's usually not too bad to deal with, but you want to get it all off and any residual amounts of anything that's soaked in, because if you stain it or anything, it will affect the way the stain or even the clear coat will go on. So, alright guys, we'll look at it here in a few days when we're ready to cut it up. So it's about an hour later, and this is why I don't trust removing the clamps too soon, because the glue is still tacky. It's on here. Now, it might be setting up inside there. I think we got a little bit of a seam here, which nothing I can really do about it. It's just going to have to, when you're working with almost a rough cut board almost, without proper tools and equipment, you're not going to get a true edge on it. So it's been 2 days. It's Saturday. I did this one Thursday. And anytime you glue wood like this, it takes a lot of sanding to get rid of all that glue and the stain from the glue. But it seems like it went pretty good. This board is sitting a little bit higher than this one, not by much. These 2 are perfect. And this one's just a little bit lower, but it's even on the sides. So it's just going to take a little bit of sanding and remove this center hump right here. So it's not going to take too much. Ideally, if your wood's thick enough, you'd run the whole thing through a planer to true it up, but this is already thin, so we gotta avoid that. I don't have a planer that'll do it anyway. Let's see what the other side looks like. Again, it's the same thing here. This is a little bit higher. That's good that the 2 main part where the bridge and everything is going to be mounted is even. There's not going to be no issues with the neck or bridge being out of line. So it'll be slightly cosmetic. If anything, you might be able to see a little low spot after sanding. So this will be the front of the body. Because anytime I build guitars, I try to put the better part on the back. That way it's not being covered up by the pick guard and all that. And you can turn the body around and see this on the back side. So I'm going to do some sanding off camera and we'll look at it. Always got excess glue to sand off and everything. And I had a kind of an interesting thought. I'm not going to do it, but it'd be something to consider for your project. Like, I left the ends on some of these boards. It'd be kind of neat, like on the side where your strap is, to kind of leave one of them on there, like center, and still have it like stapled on there, then just clear coat over it. That way it just, looks like the end of the 2x4. Just kind of a neat thought that you could do, depending on the quality of build you're going to do. Like, you could just leave that on there like that. But I'm not going to do it in this case, but it's just a kind of an idea that popped in my head. Alright, about an hour of sanding later, I got to a point where it should be usable. You can still feel a couple little high and low spots where I had to kind of level that out. But now it's perfectly smooth. I sanded down to 220. Now it's ready for the next step, which this tends to happen a lot, especially with wood. The quality of this, you don't get the best seams. So I'm gonna try it on the edge first here, just to see what it does. Might take like a little pick and go down through the glue edge there and clean it out, and then put some wood filler over it. So we'll look at it after that, after I sand it. Alright, so I'm going to get ready to do the routing and cut this thing out. I like to do the routing first, if possible, on something like this, because as long as you get your neck, your pickups, and your bridge in the same spot, if the body's off just the teeniest tiny bit, it's not going to be super critical. Whereas if you try to go back and do this, you might mess something up. So I just like to do it like this. Do it however you prefer. I really like this template. I got it from Smokewood. And it's got all the sizes and depths and everything on here. So that's very handy. Alright, so as always, I have a problem with the routing of something. And this time it was the neck pocket. The whole template decided to come loose, and the bit started going like this. I thought the body was moving, like the clamp came loose. I didn't think too much of it, then I realized what happened. So luckily I was able to save it by shifting the whole thing over this way, and got a pretty clean neck pocket. I just need sanded a little bit. This is routed exactly deep enough for a 5-way switch or 3-way switch. 3/4 inch, 3/4 inch, and 5/8. That's all the routing. Now I just got to trace it the rest of the way and cut it out and true up the edges. Alright, so just cut it out. I'm going to try to use the template bit on it just to get a truer edge to avoid any sanding mistakes, which I usually end up with. There's all the pieces that's cut. And when I was routing it, the sawdust from it felt damp. So I thought I better check the moisture content, and it's right at 11-12%, so it's right where it needs to be as far as that goes. It just seemed probably just sappy from being pine was the problem. I hope this part's not visible. I think the pick guard will cover it. Hope so. Yeah, I know it should there. But it turned out pretty good. Definitely gonna look good. Got to clean up everything a little bit. And then once I get the edge true, I can run an 1/8 inch round over bit on it. So this is optional but highly recommended, especially if you already have templates and a router. Get this type of a router template bit, and you can anchor your, I use the same screws to align it with, and this goes around and exactly copies the template and trues up anything that would normally be a problem in these hard to reach areas right here. It makes it a night and day difference. However, I did get into it with the bandsaw a little bit, so I got to hit that with a spindle sander just a little bit. That's really the only place it needs touched up. If you notice a little flat spot right here, this is where your output jack will go. So you got to be careful to drill into that. Alright, so one more little note I want to mention. I made a very stupid mistake when I was drilling the pickup cavities, the wiring for the pickups. So I took my long bit and ran all the way through here and had no problem. Then I kept going with it and went up through here, thinking I was going to have to put a ground wire on the bridge, which you actually don't, because on a Tele you can ground it through the bridge plate, the base plate of the pickup. So even though it didn't cause me a problem, that wasn't something I had to be done. Then I came through here, and this is where I made the mistake. I drilled through the bottom part of the pickup cavity, and it came out down here in the right spot, but it came through the back, so I was able to patch it, which, considering this is made out of 2x4s, it's probably not going to be noticeable. You probably just think it's a flaw in the wood, and so it's just something to take a note of. To prevent that, drill at the top part of this cavity, up towards the top part, and it'll give you a little bit better of an angle. You can get the drill bit a little bit flatter. Just something I didn't really think about at the time. So these screws are in spots that'll be either used for mounting something or covered up by the pick guard or plate. Once I get it painted, I can set it down on that, and that'll keep anything off the surface of it. So I also drilled this out using a 7/8 hole saw. The spots on the sides there are from trying to pry out the plug, because the hole saw wasn't quite long enough. So I'll probably be going with a plate over this instead of the regular cup that I would use on a Tele style guitar. So just a few notes to consider on your build. Alright guys, let me get started on the paint, and we'll look at it after it's clear coated. I'm just using Minwax lacquer. Alright, so I did a very light wet sanding just to knock any high spots and overspray off of it. And you can feel some high and low spots from there. Now I'm afraid if I take it down the way it should be done, you can kind of see how it is. I'm afraid I will get into the wood. I don't want to do that and have to start over pretty much. So we're just going to stop. The whole idea of this is to have a very simple and rough guitar anyway. So it's still going to look good. It's not going to be a factory finish, because it's not a factory body. Like, it's just, I can only do so much with 2x4s without planing them down and making the guitar body too thin. I wet sanded it and just rubbed it out, and it looks good from about 2 foot away. You can get up close and you can see some imperfections. It's got like high and low spots. You can feel it with the grain where some of it's soaked in more than other spots. And could it be better? Yeah, it could be. But what needs to be done now at this point to make it look perfect, which I don't know if we're even going to try to do it, sand it down, flat sand it with the palm sander just to get it all even, then shoot about 4 more coats on it, then wait a week or 2 or whatever, then go for it. But I'm trying to decide if I want to do that for this, because it's so rough anyway. We're just going to go with it. It's not that bad, and you can see what I'm talking about. But it's got a good shine to it for the most part. There's a few spots I didn't even see. I got a little run right there, which I can sand that out at any point and make that disappear. But this wood was so rough, and I could have worked with it more and made it better, but I just don't think it's worth it. And the whole point of this in this video just to show you how to make a quick and dirty guitar. But you could take your time with it, especially if you're going to go with a solid color. By the time you prime it and then sand it, you can make it factory looking, make it look perfect. And I could with this if I wanted to put more time into it, but I got other projects I'm wanting to work on too. So this neck fits absolutely perfect, and it's just the same color too. So there's the decals we put on it. So I'm going to skip the rest of it, and we'll look at it when it's done and do a quick little sound sample of it. So just in the middle, setting everything up at the neck, bolted down, getting ready to position the pick guard here. I want to make a quick note about the electronics. So I went with Guitar Fetish pots just because I had them in stock. Standard probably CRL or something 3-way switch. And the pickups are from Guitar Madness on eBay. The bridge pickup is the standard, is what it's called. So it's a very standard, very basic bridge pickup, about 6K ohms, Alnico 5 with a brass plated base plate, copper plated base plate. The neck pickup I've always felt was weak on Teles, but I wanted to keep it with the original pickup for some time. For some reason on this setup, but I went with the overwound one. So this is the Guitar Madness again, 72. This comes in right at 7.4 or 7.8 k ohms. Still wound with 43 gauge wire. This is 42 gauge coming in right at 6, so it should be a good sound. This should sound more like a Strat pickup. I'm getting ready to put everything in, and for the jack plate, since I chipped it right there, I just went with that type of plate for that. Alright guys, so it's all together and tuned up. Intonation's just about right. Everything's wired. Had a couple issues. One thing you probably noticed is the strap buttons are black. I thought I had some chrome ones in stock, but I didn't. So I'll change that out at some point. It's definitely not perfect by any means. The tuners have a rough feel to it. May need to do a real quick fret level on it. Level and crown. Frets are buzzing just a little bit. I kept adjusting on it. But I like to have the action down just a hair more. I mean, it's playable like it is. But get ready to hook it up and see what it sounds like. Alright, you're good for a sound sample. Got hooked up to the Hot Rod Deluxe. I'm just going to do a couple quick licks. The first lick's actually an intro to one of the songs I wrote a few years ago. A little bit of kind of semi-chicken picking. I do want to put a note on here that I'm running with the tone on 3/4, just because the bridge pickup is kind of trebly. But when I go to the other positions, I'll turn it up a little bit. Intonation still may be just a little bit off on this. Alright, going to both pickups. It is noise cancelling with both of them on. I love the sound with the bridge and neck pickup on. Good punchy, good woody middle sound. Neck pickup, very impressive. One of the best sounding Tele neck pickups I've ever heard. And it's balanced good too. It's like a perfect combination. So, before I end the video, I'm going to talk about what I would change. Might have went with a slightly different bridge pickup to get a little bit more punchier mid-range out of it, but this was just fine. I may have went with the through the body strings instead of top loading, but I just wanted to keep it simple for this project. Probably end up doing a fret level and crown on it, nothing major. It does seem like it's buzzing in a couple spots, and I like to get the strings down just a little bit more. But other than that, that's pretty much all I would change. I wish the body would have turned out just a little bit better as far as the finish goes. And again, that's my fault for rushing it. I could have done a way better job on it than that, but it's also made out of a 2x4. Alright guys, I guess that's going to be it. So questions, comments, suggestions, leave a comment below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So thanks for watching guys. Catch you later.